Broman Crusade continues. This is a map-based campaign that we are using to generate tabletop battles fought using the Warhammer Fantasy Battles 6th edition rule set. And it provides you with some very interesting battles. Things that you don't see when you just make it up as you go along. In fact, our last battle seemed a little weird because it turned out to be something of a delaying engagement in which the undead threw a host of zombies at the invading Bromans. They're coming from the south, headed for Castle Gallagher. Did some damage, lost a couple of wolves, and then raced off in this direction. Each of the, the Z's are where they recruit zombies. The B are barrows where they will recruit additional skeletons. And one thing that we should point out, somebody said, hey, you know what? We should make it so that there is now a barrow here because the Bromans lost a fight. They're going to have to bury their dead. And there is a potential for, well, let's see, what did they lose in that battle? They lost, well, that's the bad guy roster. Let's flip over. So Force Banquo, for those of you that are intellectually and literarily inclined, is literarily a word? If you have a literary inclination, you will recognize that the names of the forces for the undead are all taken from ghosts that appear in this plays of Shakespeare. So we have Julius over here on the west. We have Desdemona, who is hanging out right here in the center, and then Force Banquo over here on the east. Force Banquo was able to kill three figures of spearmen on the part of Force Cherub. That's the Broman Force armies are all named after angels, classes of angels. We have Force Cherub, Seraph, and Archangel. Force Cherub lost 2 Knights of the Lamb. In Warhammer speak, that's Knights of the Wolf, but of course, we're using angels, we're the good guys, we're using Knights of the Lamb. They also lost 3 spearmen. That means they lost 5 figures. That means that despite spending a day treating this graveyard, blessing it, sanctifying it, they have to leave a barrow mine behind, which will allow for the forces of the undead to summon 5 more skeletal units there. In fact, I forgot I needed to put some red X's down here. Now, this is a fairly clean map. Let me show you the notes for the week that ends on the 18th. This week actually begun the week of March 12th. And see the little forest fires here? That's a bit of a problem for the survivors of Force Banquo. This is where Banquo and Cherub fought. Oh, no, not Force Banquo. Because we know from the tabletop that Force Banquo, the necromancer, and his iron thrall, who is accompanying him, fled north with the survivors. They are going to wind up. So the battle was fought on the 16th. On the 17th, they're moving along roads at a good pace. They'll be here, the 18th, and then on the 19th, they'll make it to this barrow. Now, the 19th begins the next week. We're doing 1-week turns. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But I just want to establish where everybody is at the end of the 18th. Force Archangel, and we talked about this before. Force Archangel on the 18th. They're going to spend the 19th crossing the bridge. Force, where's the last one? Force Seraph. 19, they are going to spend the 19th. I think it's wiping. Oh, this barrow has already been cleansed. They're going to spend the 18th crossing this bridge, and then on the 19th, that's where they will wind up. So we need to figure out what the weather is like on the 19th so we can see how everybody moves. As I said, you've got Julius over here, Desdemona, and Banquo. The forces of undead are fighting a defensive action. They are delaying. The longer they delay, the more opportunity they have to grow their forces. And you can see here that this barrow, they only get to recruit once a week, will not be available until the 22nd. I made a note on the week of the 12th. This barrow becomes available on the 19th. Well, hey, that's the first day, and Banquo timed it just right. Or Julius, rather. I keep saying Banquo, I don't know why. Julius timed it just right. They're going to be here in this barrow. They're going to spend the 19th summoning additional skeletons for the fight against Archangel. So let's talk about what happened with the survivors of Force Cherub. The battle is fought on the 16th. On the 17th, the White Wizard blesses and sanctifies the cemetery that's there. We could put a little X. So that's this. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not true. On the 17th, the humans have to bury their dead. They have to treat their wounded. And look, we've got a couple of knights that are going to return to action on the 30th. We've got 3 spearmen that will come back into the fight on the 30th. Until then, the Knights of the Lamb are down to just 6 figures. They've got 8 total, but 2 of them are injured. These spearmen are down to just 14 effectives. They've got 3 wounded and 3 that are dead. All right, so you fight a battle on the 16th. You recover your dead on the 17th. On the 18th, they will... Oh, no, they can't do that on the 18th. Oh, no, that's actually perfect. They'll be able to sanctify this on the 18th. That also counts as the day of rest. So on the 19th, they'll be able to set out. And, oh, by the way, these forest fires will be out. So it won't slow the humans down anymore. Had Force Banquo fled along this road, they would have run into trouble because they would have been choked out by the smoke. So that may be part of the reason why. I mean, I didn't think about this at the time of the fight, but, you know, just naturally and organically, the Necromancer fled north and Force Banquo pursues. Well, does Force Banquo pursue? That's one of the first things we have to answer. We're doing a solo campaign here, so people may not behave the way we want them to behave. And the way we figure that out is to say, well, remember, Force Banquo's mission is to lay siege to Castle Gallagher, but this is a fairly strong force that is only going to get stronger. They're going to run up here and come back down. So it might make more sense for Force Banquo to make the straight shot up here, fight a battle with Desdemona. You've got Force Seraph down here working its way north as well. Do we want to go straight at him? Or do we pursue the defeated force? We're going to let the dice decide. On a 1, 2, 3... the general in charge of Force Cherub, Captain Legan, that's the guy who's in charge. On a 1, 2, 3, he says, always go straight for the nerve center. On a 4, 5, 6, Legan says, I want round 2, Rocky. I want a rematch. There you have it. 1, 2, 3. When we figure out our troop, they're going to be, oh, I already do the arrow there. So, you saw it here first, gang. Cherub is not going to worry about Banquo. It's going to go straight up this way. How does that play out? I don't know. Let's find out. Before we do that, we are doing 1 week turns, so we got a couple of things we got to deal with. The first thing we got to deal with is weather. We got to find out what the weather is like this week. And I think we know what everybody's doing. Force Banquo is going to move up here and probably, well, after they summon these guys, they'll see which way. They're going to wind up going up to the barrow and then coming back down this way to block. Desdemona has been paused and is waiting here to see what happens. They just recruited. Let's see. This one becomes available on 3/8. So Desdemona has a choice. They can move down to block Force Cherub, or they can hold their horses and wait for the 25th. At the end of the week, they can recruit here. This area becomes available on the 18th. That says 8th. It should say 18th. So that's long enough. If Desdemona comes down to block these guys, it's going to be a bit of a foot race. If they can get there a day early, then and we need to decide that. Are they going to race down and recruit more boys here? Or are they just going to wait and hopefully recruit more boys here on the 26th? So once again, we're going to determine whether it's a holding action or not via a D6. On a 1, 2, 3, Desdemona holds. On a 4, 5, 6, they'll march down here to this barrow. And on a 1, they're going to hold. They're just going to wait for the cherubs to come at us. And by the way, that is not my smoke alarm, if you know what I'm talking about. That's Biscotti. She's in here hanging out with me. She may get a little flappy. This is our weather chart. We're going to roll the die for each day. And on a 1, 2, we move up a box. And as you can see, that's light rain. If you get into this area, there's fog, and each of those will have effect. We've got a total of 7 days that we need to worry about. So day 1 is going to be clear skies. On day 2, we move up a box. So we have light rain on day 2. On day 3, and we're going to do this 6 times. We move back down to clear skies. Day 4, we hold. Day 5, we hold. Day 6, we move back down to here. And then on day 7, we move down to here. So that is going to be the 19th, 20th, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and 25th. So this is where we're going to hold on the 25th. So not a lot on the weather front. That one day of light rain doesn't do anything. You need a couple of days of light rain. This shows you that if you're traveling by road, it's not until day 2 that you suffer any deleterious effects. You lose a quarter of your movement. The first value is for troops, and the second is for artillery. So in other words, it gets worse for you. Well, let's see. If we have light rain, it's not a big deal. The big thing is off-road. Notice that, and somebody was asking about this earlier, if you look, the cannons get worse a lot faster if you're off-road. That's the biggest difference. Be that as it may, one day of light rain isn't going to mean anything. It takes a day for it to dry, but we're fine. There's one other thing we need to do before we are ready to plot movement for the week, and that's turn to Henry Hyde's Wargaming campaigns. He uses a Donald Featherstone mechanic called chance cards, although, and he does, if you go to the website, you can print up chance cards. I know that my good buddy Purple Druid, I highly recommend you check out his YouTube channel. He actually has a deck of cards that will do the same thing that we're about to do. This is a simple random events table. We're going to roll percentile dice first for the Bromans. We get a total of 90, and oh boy, I think that's a bad thing. You want to roll low. 90 for the entire week. Clean bottoms. Oh, I'm sorry. That's actually a very good thing. You may choose any, see, there's 90. Choose any one hex. All right, now Henry uses 5-mile hexes for his campaign system, so we're going to choose any random 5-mile circle, I guess you could say, which is only a quarter of an inch, but it's any location on the map, containing your naval, riverborne, or lake vessels, and half the ships it contains are deemed to have had their hulls scraped with barnacles, weed, or other unwanted detritus and may increase their speed by 20% for the next D6 turns. Oh, so traveling by river is quicker. Well, that doesn't do us any good. It's all right, right? This covers every possibility. If we had any kind of a naval campaign, we would do that. But since we don't, it winds up being no effect. For the undead, we roll a result of a 16. And that is going to be partisans. Local peasants take umbrage at the passage of your troops. Decide to launch a surprise attack. Your opponent may select one hex containing your troops. Whether a conurbation or countryside rolls 10 d10s, generating a total between 1, 10, and 100. Multiply this by 10 to give the total number of partisans. All right, now, we're not going to multiply by 10. We're just going to use that number because our figure ratio is 1 to 10. So when we talked earlier about 3 spearmen that have fallen in battle, that's actually 30 spearmen. So what do we got? Multiplied gives a number of partisans. Launch an attack on your troops in that hex at dawn, generating a wakey-wakey scenario with some of your troops asleep at the start of the game. All right, so what does he say here? He says, roll 10 d10s, generating a total between 10 and 100. I'm going to roll 2d10 and multiply by 5 because I don't want to have to do that much math. And we get a 7 and a 1. I know it's a 70. There we go. See, 70. It looks like my yellow isn't holding up so hot. So 8 times 5, that's 40. That means a unit of 40, surprise, 40 peasants attack. Hey, we just generated ourselves a little skirmish scenario. It says your opponent, local peasants, your opponent may select any one hex. We got to think about where that is. The way we'll adjudicate this is by deciding that the Z's, where these cemeteries are, these are villages of peasants that are oppressed by the death cult. Relatable. So we only have 2 Z's that are left unmessed around with. Oh, alternative. Hey, you know what we could do? We could actually rule, why don't we do this? Why don't we add a unit of peasants to force cherub? This is a much better way to interpret that result. So force cherub. Now I said 5 times 8 is 40. That's a lot of guys. That's maybe something of a balance tipper. And I don't have a lot of experience with peasants. We may need to go to a brand new army list to make this work. Because if we look here at our ravening hordes, if we go to the Empire, I don't think they have. Do they have peasants? They got flagellants, outriders, Reichsguard? No. No. The only peasants I'm really aware of in this are, tell you what we can do. Why don't we decide that the peasants are spearmen with no armor. And instead of doing, so that was 8. Let's cut it in half. Let's do this. I'm going to roll another pair of d10s. And I think this will give us the same effect. So we had 8, 10 plus 7, oh, and then one more, and another 10. So up to 50 peasants. Well, that's still a pretty big number, don't you think? 8, let's just double it. Let's say that we now have 16 peasants in this village that we have liberated. And peasants, I'll make a little note for myself because sometimes I forget, are swordsmen that have no armor, no shield, no nothing. So they're not going to have a whole lot of staying power. But it is a little bit of something that does kind of reinforce the spines. And that's because we've liberated this village here. Hey, look how well random dice tables can generate interesting new events for your campaign. Are you listening, D&D players? The stuff we do in wargame campaigns is applicable to D&D because D&D is a wargame, at least if you're doing it right. Anyway, we went ahead and at the start of the day, the start of the week, Force Banquo is going to, like I said, they sanctify the cemetery, and then they move out. So let's find out what happens next. To finish up on the aftermath, of what's going on over here on the western portion, Force Banquo is going to have time this week. Remember, they started over here on the 19th. On the 20th, they will summon a barrow, and that's why it says 327, because this barrow can't be recruited from for a week. Then they move up to here, and they just have time on the 24th to summon another group of skeletons. That's what this little note here means, +2 barrows. Now, when you recruit at a barrow, there's a 1 in 6 chance that you recruit 10 grave guards. On a 1 through 5, you recruit 10 plus d10 skeletons. So we got to pull out our d10 again. We're going to roll it twice, and Force Banquo is going to add 19 skeletons, and it's going to add another 13 skeletons. So another 32 skeletons for Force Banquo. Plus 32 skeletons. So now they are a force worth reckoning with. And in fact, we're going to give them another unit with banners, musician. I got 4 of them. I can put 4 on the table at any one time. So they'll have musician, banner, and champion in that new unit of 32 skeletons. That's going to give them a lot more staying power, and now we're approaching the point where we have a real, a serious battle on our hands. The other armies are going to look like this. Force Seraph down here in the south crosses the bridge. They move up. This barrow is already blessed. It moves up to here, and it's going to, oh, shoot. So remember that on Sundays they rest. So on the 22nd, they'll be here. On the 23rd, they'll arrive, and then they have to rest on the 24th, meaning on the 25th, Force Seraph is going to be able to start next week by blessing this barrow. The winners of our previous fight, and I'll put a couple of swords, cross swords here to show that we had a battle, like we said before, they are going to have to rest, recover their dead. They rest on the Sunday, that's the 18th, and then on the 19th, 20th, 21st, they arrive at this barrow. On the 22nd, they bless it. On the 23rd, they cross Nuala Stream. Now they have a problem. They have to rest on the 24th, so they're going to stop right there. Wait, did I get that right? So on the, what do we say? On the 19th, they head out. 19, 20, 21, they arrive. They bless on the 23rd. So 23rd, and then they rest on the 24th. So that's where Force Cherub is going to be. And they're still like a week and a half away from getting any of their boys back. This is where the fight is going to occur. Force Archangel finishes crossing the bridge on the 19th. Force Julius over here, they recruit on the 19th. So once again, we have a barrow that generates 10 plus D10 skeletons. So another 20 skeletons for Force Julius. And again, we're going to give them 2 banners. And Force Julius just got a little bit bigger too. So pretty good rolls on the recruiting there. Let's take a look at our force rosters real quick. Having successfully delayed one of the invading armies by several days, it wound up being like 3 or 4 days when all was said and done, Force Banquo is going to add another 32 skeletons. That brings them up to 53 skeletons in total. Not bad. Force, which one? Julius. Let's make sure we get that right. They get another 20, so they are also going to have, man, that's a lot of skeletons. I hope I have enough skeleton figures. They're going to wind up with 58 skeletons altogether. Oh, I'm pretty sure I do, because after you back out the 6 banners and leader stands, if you will, I only need another 52 skeletons. They only have 16 zombies, and they just have the 1 thrall, Ardoth Shmian. I think I said Shmian in the last one, but it turns out it was Korinsky was the thrall in the battle down in the south. But anyway, be that as it may, we're looking at Force Julius fighting Force Archangel. And this one might actually be, again, tougher for Force Julius, because Force Archangel ain't no joke, brother. Force Archangel has our overall General Samout, the High Priest Rickley. It's got the Knightly Order. That's 10 Knights of the... It's Knights of the Knightly Order. 10 Swordsmen, 30 Spearmen, 12 Archers, and then Captain Kavat. So pretty big force on Force Archangel. And this time, because it is a meeting engagement, in fact, you can travel by road on foot 3/4 of an inch. It's 1.5 inches between these two, like, travel nodes, if you will. They're going to meet right in the center, so it's going to be a long battle. They're going to fight that battle first thing in the morning. Got my scratch paper with the road running up and down the center. I've got a deck of cards, and I've got my copy of the Solo Wargaming Guide. William Sylvester says, hey, here's what you're going to do. You're going to lay out 16 cards in a nice grid, 4 across, 4 down, and every black card is an item of interest. Well, okay, if you do that, on average, you are going to have 8 terrain items on your table. That doesn't work so hot for Warhammer Fantasy Battles. So we're only going to use clubs. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to lay out, let me just push this to the side. I'm going to lay out 4x4 straight across the top. And the only quadrants, if you will, that we are going to have... So we are going to wind up with a lot more terrain than you usually see on a Warhammer Fantasy Battles table. Hey, it's a broken... You know what? In fact, we might even have more because I didn't count right. We're going to put a 4th row down here. That's a lot of clubs. Ordinarily, you would have, on average, 4 terrain items, which is a little more reasonable. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, the best laid plans of mice and men, right? Let's find out what those are. The 2 and the 3 are going to be hills. The 5 is going to be heavy woods, uncrossable, blocks line of sight. 8 is going to be light woods. That is crossable, slows movement, does block line of sight. And then our 6 is another heavy woods. So heavy woods over here. And the queen is grass. That's going to be something unusual. Since we are in a blasted wasteland, let's just go ahead and drop that ruined building right here along the road, a ruined tavern or homestead, if you will, and that gives us an interesting tabletop. Of course, the Force Archangel is going to be moving up from the north, and the Force Undead, which one was that? Julius? Yeah, Julius is going to be coming on from here. So that really does inform how we're going to approach setup. The Bromans are going to have to set up within, let's call it within 10 inches of the center. Both guys should, I guess, right? Remember, my table is 24 inches across. So we may have to have them coming on. Oh, let's do that. Since it's a meeting engagement, let's say that our deployment zones are within 6 inches of the road for both teams. And then we'll go like 4 inches up. And that means you're not going to be able to start the fight with everybody on the table. It's going to be a little bit crowded. And you're going to have to think about, well, how do I get my guys into battle line as we are engaged in this meeting engagement here along the road? with all of, so now that we've got all of that said, at least this is part of what I do to make this a little more manageable. I'm going to be able to set up my table. I'm going to be able to go ahead and do deployment. So when we go to the next episode, oh, and by the way, I should put down, let me just make one last note, that this fight is going to happen on 3/21. And what was the weather on that day? 1920, oh, clear skies. We had light rain the day before. But with these clear skies, Force Archangel, and so no cannon this time. Elijah's not going to make an appearance. But this is a lot of guys. We got a lot of different units. It's really probably only about 1,000-point fight, maybe 1,500 points. But setting all of this up kind of before we turn the camera on, and I may even go ahead and do the initial deployment for each of these guys. Let me roll 2 dice. The yellow is for the Bromans. Whoever rolls highest has to deploy first. All right, the Bromans deploy first, and that's going to give Force Julius a little more time. Bromans deploy first, and then we can just dive right in, and we can save ourselves a little bit of time on that battle report. That'll be the next episode of this Broman Crusade against the Undead. Hope you guys appreciate all of the logistics fun. I hope you guys realize exactly how interesting. You know, I'm doing this as a solo exercise, but there's no reason you couldn't do this as a 2-player exercise. If you got a buddy that you both like playing Warhammer fantasy battles, or, you know, whatever miniature war game is your soup du jour, then all you got to do is write down your orders. You've only got 3 armies, 3 to 5, and say, yeah, these guys are going to go up here, these guys are going to go there, and then you can sit down together and hash out what happens next. If your primary goal is winning and dominating, then this might not work, but if you're really looking for a way to generate some interesting tabletop battles, I mean, this is good stuff, man. We've got a meeting engagement, and it's not necessarily a balanced point cost. You got all this stuff. You got a priest, you got a knightly order, you got a guy that can't stop bumping the camera, going up against Force Desdemona, Force Julius, who just grabbed an extra. This is actually going to be, I don't know, man. This is going to be an interesting one. 60 skeletons, 16 zombies. And once again, do recall that what we're really trying to do on the part of the undead is hammer down these numbers as much as you can. We may wind up next week deciding that Desdemona has to slide around after this fight. If this fight goes poorly for Force Julius, they don't have to win this fight. They just need to do as much damage as is inhumanly possible, because they're undead, right? Because they have this follow-up force of Force Banquo coming down to cut off Force Cherub. There may be a bit of a race there. Or alternatively, even if Desdemona does not, Force Banquo maybe can come over and relieve any siege of Fort Gallagher. I don't know, it's interesting stuff, man. It's fun to speculate, but it's hard to say what's going to happen until we figure out what goes on in this battle, this second battle in our campaign. I hope you tune in here in, I don't know, 2 days, next week, whenever. It's coming. I'm praying for you.